A very, very warm welcome to a panel about finding the Shackleton's endurance and how the Earth observation data was used on this. As we recall, the Achilles icebreaker departed from South Africa in early 2022 to support the International Endurance 2020 mission, and Earth observation data was a key for this one. So today we have a great panel with me. My name is Tero Vauraste. I'm Senior Business Development Advisor with ICEYE and a Woodrow Wilson Center Global Fellow. We will have a keynote from Ms. Shay, who is VP of Analytics from ICEYE. Then we will have Lasse Rabenstein, who is CEO of Drift+Noise, who was conducting the mission, giving his remarks. And this will be commented by Snider, who is a distinguished ice navigator from his company's CEO, Martech. We will have the opportunity to join you on board, so please have your cell phones ready. So there will be the Slido application to be used. You can scan this barcode with your cell phone. Do it now, please. And once you've done it, you click on it, and you can dial in and send your question. I will see that from my cell phone, so we can use those questions as we go. But let's go for it and welcome Shay to the podium.
Thank you, Tero. Hello, I'm Dr. Shay, Vice President of Analytics at the Finnish satellite company ICEYE. I lead a team of interdisciplinary scientists and engineers that use synthetic aperture radar, or SAR, to advance our quantitative understanding of our changing Earth. The technology we deploy enables quick and preemptive planning for geological, climatological, and natural catastrophe conditions. Today, I'm here to share with you a unique event that my team was able to participate in. ICEYE shared unique radar imagery from space to help the international team aboard the Endurance 22 mission to identify the Endurance shipwreck. But first, a little background for those of you not familiar with Shackleton. Ernest Shackleton and his crew of 27 men set sail for Antarctica in 1914 aboard the vessel Endurance. The objective was to establish a base in the Weddell Sea coast. They had tried twice before and had failed both times. The team was fundamentally plagued by the rapidly changing sea conditions and the inability to navigate through the icy waters. The vessel was ultimately trapped by ice in January 1915, and the expedition never met its objective. One crew member was to have said that the ship was frozen like an almond in the middle of a chocolate bar. The ship was crushed and sunk ultimately on November 21st, 1915, and the crew abandoned the region. Now, the Endurance shipwreck has been one of the most elusive shipwrecks in history. However, the wreck was discovered March 5th, 2022, through this Endurance 22 mission, and in large part using data provided by ICEYE. Today with me, I have Dr. Lasse Rabenstein, who is the senior team member of the Endurance 22 expedition and CEO co-founder of Drift+Noise Polar Services, who saw firsthand this mission to success. Part of the success has been the up-to-date and up-to-the-hour sea ice maps that only SAR imagery from space can provide. And so here is one of the examples of our synthetic aperture radar imagery from ICEYE, and you can see the Endurance 22 mission ship there circled in the box. So, of course, while we're not explicitly talking about the Arctic today, we are talking about the challenging conditions that plague modern navigation and ocean monitoring. Cloudy conditions and limited solar illumination in the far north and the far south still mean that remote sensing technology, and in particular SAR technology, is a must to enable navigation through the icy waters. SAR, which is an active sensing system, enables us to see through clouds, smoke, and haze. Unlike passive sensors, which if you think for a moment about toggling the optical imagery on your Google Maps satellite app, SAR can control its own ability to illuminate objects. Therefore, it can see night and day, and it's independent of the sun. ICEYE has 21 satellites in orbit around the Earth, observing the planet multiple times a day with high resolution. ICEYE, originally named for its intended use, has had a history of ice monitoring since 2015. We observe with high detail daily changes on the surface of the Earth, including ice, as one of the use cases. Our single polarization X-band microwave sensors create a clear perspective in order to really understand fundamentally the change on Earth. SAR imagery from ICEYE, in combination, of course, with other sensors, was used by the Endurance 22 expedition to navigate safely through the narrow, icy corridors of Antarctica to complete their objective to find Shackleton's ship. The elusive wreck was discovered due to the consistent and quick imagery provided both day and night and through clouds by ICEYE. Whether the next challenge is enabling safe passage through icy seas or assessing floodwaters and wildfires that give rise to the increasing number of climate refugees, we have the technology at ICEYE for both consistent and persistent monitoring. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Shay, for the great remarks. And we'll go directly over to you, Lasse, for your remarks on the endeavor. So please shoot.
Yeah, thanks for letting me present today. My name is Lasse, and I had the honor to be on board the Agulhas 2, the South African research ship, which left Cape Town on February 2 this year. We were 110 people actually on this expedition from several countries in the world. So it was an expedition under a British permit, but it was an international team. And it's very important for me to emphasize that this is a real team effort, what we've done, and that we found the Endurance, and cannot be attributed to only one person, of course. 28 men left the Endurance in 1915, 110 women and men actually found it 107 years later. What is interesting to know maybe is that we have enough reasons to believe that the sea ice regime in this part of Antarctica and the Weddell Sea in the beginning of the 21st century is probably not too different from what Shackleton encountered in 1915, despite global warming. So there is not yet a negative trend in the sea ice reduction in the Antarctic sea ice cover, yet, I have to say, because global warming is happening, of course. And we were prepared for the worst. We had helicopters on board to build an ice camp and everything. But we were a little bit lucky this year because the ice retreated remarkably far south in the Weddell Sea. And instead of 2-meter thick multi-year ice, we also encountered a lot of first-year ice. And the ship you see here, the Agulhas 2, is a Polar Class 5 ship. So the Polar Class 1 is the strongest icebreaker. It goes down to Polar Class 6 for the icebreaking ship. So 5 is not really suited for multi-year ice. So we were really lucky in that sense. But a key to success on such a mission and to navigate is a very good cooperation between the scientists on board. And I would say the 15 scientists on board, I would say half of them were probably committed to provide best possible data. And we also had supporters from on land, modelers, for example, modeling the drift of the sea ice. And we could provide that to the mariners on board. And we also had an excellent and well-educated ice navigator on board, which is also very, very important. And so the combination of this both was very efficient. And we were even welcomed on the bridge and installed an information screen there for the mariners to always contact us. And if you looked out of the window during the expedition, here you see a night. So we had to work day and night. We only had 3 weeks to find the needle in the haystack. And that is not a lot for a wreck search. So we were really under time pressure. I had to work day and night and even had to change the position of the ship to the next dive position in conditions like this. And you need a roadmap for this. And this was where ICEYE provided really, really good help with a remarkably repetition rate, delivering images to the ship, even in this cloudy, and so we only had one cloud-free day, by the way. So even during the daylight, optical images mostly wouldn't have helped. And on these images, the experienced user can identify ice ridges, thinner ice, open water, different ice types, icebergs, like which is marked here. We also had another satellite. We had scientists from the German Aerospace Center on board. They operating another SAR mission, but only a single satellite, not 21. That's really a lot. I'm impressed, I have to say, and it's really a paradigm change probably in the Earth observation industry here. Here you have the other SAR image we used, and this is a screenshot from the information screen we had on the bridge. In red, for example, you see the course of the track, the ship track. In the black cross is the position of the ship. And this green and yellow circles, for example, are predicted positions over the next hours because the ice is constantly drifting. And where we parked the ship, we had to take into account where the ship actually drifted to because we had a very expensive AUV connected to the ship going down to 3,000 meters depth. I mentioned we started a startup company, a spin-off from the German Alfred Wegener Institute a couple of years ago. And on this expedition, we learned again what parts maybe could be automated because there were so many people involved in the navigation and data management process on board, which most ships probably cannot afford on their usual voyages. So we are working hard to automate a lot of this. Here you see, again, Sentinel-1 radar images included in our app, and ice drift forecasts, etc. So that's our mission in our startup in this company to make the service we had in Endurance 22 available to more ships, not only to the research ships. Again, I have to thank all the partners and mention all the partners which were involved. So the expedition was financed by the Falklands Maritime Heritage Trust, but involved, as I mentioned, a lot of international collaboration. I just mentioned and showed some of them here on this slide. This session is about ice navigation, but I don't want to, I would really like to take you now on a trip to 3,000 meters depth in the Weddell Sea. This was the AUV which was used on board, and it was diving day and night. So one dive took about 8 hours, scanning the ocean floor, and the images they brought back from 3,000 meters depth when they found the wreck are just breathtaking. And I leave it now in silence with you, looking at this remarkable wreck of the Endurance. It really looks like it was only sank yesterday, although it was 107 years ago. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Lasse. So meanwhile, we see the video over here. The Slido will be coming in a minute or two. So in case you missed it in the beginning, you will have the opportunity to find the app in a minute or two. But Duke, you've been an ice navigator for decades, and actually I guess this is the 4th decade you're still active on duty, being numerous times in the Arctic and in the Antarctic and seen it all and seen satellite Earth observation data, days without it. So what's your take on this all?
I think this is an amazing story of how the technology has brought us forward in safety in general. In the past, we would have been relying on accessing someone else's interpretation of an occasional satellite image that might pass over an area of interest. Otherwise, it was looking out the window, sometimes through zero visibility. And as both of the speakers have pointed out, what we have now is not only synthetic aperture radar, which is clear day and night through the fog, through the cloud, but we also have multiple satellite passes, as in ICEYE, with much higher resolution. And when we talk about resolution, we talk about an image that will show us pieces of ice. In our perfect world, we'd want to see pieces of ice 10 meters or bigger. The difference that we're seeing now is we can get almost instant access to high resolution, less than 100 meter imagery on board a ship in a very, very small digital package. So we get the satellite services now from companies like ICEYE that have the rapid transmission, rapid passes, being presented in software and imagery products such as Drift+Noise and ICEYE. The two of them come together to give us more real time, because that's the key for navigating. And that's the key to what made the Endurance expedition possible and effective, was timely, high-resolution imagery presented very quickly to the experienced people on the bridge. But it also still takes an ice navigator with years of experience analyzing that type of imagery and interpreting that into what you're going to operate in the ice. This is a huge leap forward. This is exactly what we want on the bridge of a ship.
Thank you. Excellent remarks. So I will turn now to the audience. I have a few questions here. And I just love this because this is a discussion for everyone. Our first question is from August. He's 10 years old. And he's asking us, why were you trying to find Shackleton's ship? Lasse.
Why are we trying to find
it? August is asking.
Yeah.
I think this is a very fundamental question.
It's a good question. And actually, many people ask the question. But knowing about the attention we got doing this, this already tells me how much worth it was to find it and go for it, because it continues a remarkable story, probably one of the most inspiring stories of polar adventure and polar exploration ever happened, and actually it was a real story, and now it continues. We had an educational program on board, for example, engaged school classes in the United States and in the UK, and also in my home country in Germany. They all want to become polar explorers now. They are totally engaged with the polar regions, not only Antarctica, but also with the Arctic. We are in an Arctic Circle conference here. So that alone justifies a lot. Then it's about the research we have being done. It's about the challenge, actually, because before we succeeded in this, a lot of people doubt that this actually is possible, operating an AUV 3,000 meter depth in a multi-year ice regime in the Weddell Sea. So that's also a proof of concept and brought forward technology. So for example, this could be used also in other scenarios to study black smokers on the ground for fundamental research, or rescue operations for submarines, so a lot. So we should make sure that this technology we used here and the knowledge will not be forgotten, but now will be used in the future. And of course the ice navigation aspect. So all the different aspects we used, for example, the provision of daily images from ICEYE, which is very new. I mean, ICEYE didn't exist 10 years ago, shows us what's possible, and that alone also made it possible, made it worthwhile to look for the endurance.
Right, excellent. So now we'll get back to space. This one goes for Shay. How many satellites will ICEYE fly next year when we have the Arctic Circle conference again?
Oh, that's a fantastic question.
Yep.
I mean, we undergo essentially doublings year over year. So I'm not sure that our number's quite up to 42 by then, but we are definitely planning to launch quite a few in the next couple of months. Actually, we have some coming up. So it does fluctuate, and that's a whole other plan and other topic. But yeah, at least a dozen, or maybe like 5 or 6 more we can anticipate.
Okay, let's see how that is. So when we get back here next year. So next one goes first for Duke, and then perhaps for Lasse. How did you detect berg bits and small icebergs by ICEYE images?
Well, that's an interpretation of the synthetic aperture radar. An experienced eye gets to recognize the different signature. Bergy bits and bergs reflect radar in a specific way that is different from even multi-year ice. Multi-year ice is close to it, but we can definitely tell the difference by how the color of the return is, the color of the picture we're looking at. And if you were to come back to the slide that Lasse had, that one in particular, the iceberg would have had a very, very definitive shape around what was predominantly first-year ice that hadn't gone through a year's freezing. So it stands out. And it was in a large flow, but we could also pick that out by its different definition of color if it was in amongst smaller flows of broken up ice. So it's a trained eye looking at the different shades of gray, if it were, and we can tell pretty quickly what the difference is.
Okay, I think that's well covered now, so I'll take the next one. This is for Lasse. Were ecosystems and maybe their destruction considered when navigating through the ice?
The destruction of the ecosystem.
Yes.
In the deep sea, where there's also an ecosystem, of course, we didn't touch anything with the AUV, so we left everything as it was, and as you could see here, so we interfered with the ecosystem as least as possible. So the expedition itself was under the International Antarctic Treaty, and we had a permit following all the very strict regulations going into Antarctica. So we did not even left a single piece of paper or so somewhere on the ice, nothing. So we didn't spill anything. So that's really, so to get an Antarctic research permit, that's really, really strict. And we took everything home. We didn't leave anything. Yeah, that's probably best what I can take to it, yeah.
Duke, maybe you could discuss a bit about the underwater noise and things like that, which have been researched to some extent.
Absolutely, and particularly in the Arctic, where we generally have a higher level of traffic. There is an awful lot of research going on about underwater noise, about impact of ice breaking. And there are, as a result of that, generally restrictions on how and when. An example of that is the Baffinland iron ore export in the Canadian Eastern Arctic. Ship speeds are regulated in areas where there is a potential impact on underwater sea life. Ice breaking is restricted to a very short period of time at the beginning of a season, so as not to impact wildlife and hunting and fishing and indigenous people, and at the end of a season. So we're looking throughout the polar world, both Antarctic and Arctic, and being very, very aware of the impact of shipping. Newer designs are coming out that are incorporating much more benign systems, particularly with sound abatement and that sort of thing. So it's something we are very, very aware of, and restrict our operations when it is to the best efforts for protecting the environment. Absolutely.
Okay, good. Next one goes to Shay. I'll combine two questions here. So first one, is synthetic aperture data free and publicly available? And secondly, can you use artificial intelligence to help detecting icebergs on synthetic aperture radar imagery?
Yeah, great questions. Yes to the first. I mean, of course, we don't open source our entire archive, but we do open source a bit of it, and on the ICEYE website, you can, of course, get a look at that and download. I mean, there are, broadly speaking, beyond ICEYE, free, Sentinel data, for instance, just very coarser resolution. So it depends, again, on what you're looking for and how you want to use that data. Then in terms of machine learning, absolutely yes. In fact, I just had a master's student graduate who was looking at the Thwaites Glacier in Antarctica and developing a semantic segmentation deep learning model to detect it and try to differentiate between different types of ice there as well. So absolutely, and a really useful technique for some of the components and issues we've been discussing.
Yeah, and actually in addition to that, our data is also available for researchers with the Copernicus programs, so that can be used as well. Duke?
I'd like to add to this that the resolution is a very important piece here. We've been able to get very low resolution satellite imagery, like say Sentinel, free, open source for a number of years, and that's great. What we're now getting is high resolution, much closer imagery, and we're getting it rapidly and several times a day, where we might have to wait 3 or 4 days for a 500-meter resolution Sentinel free image. We are now accessing really good pictures several times a day, and that's one of the biggest keys to this whole mission success and the success of shipping in the future.
So we'll go to a final round of the questions. This one is for you, Lasse. What would you tell Ernst Shackleton about your mission if he was here today? We have some great questions, I think. It's really good. You can see that it's starting to be evening time, so it's good.
Yeah. So, boss, we found it.
That's good. Yeah. Yeah. That's a great answer. We found it. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but I think we also, the expedition also followed the spirit of Shackleton, because it was a big challenge we faced, and we didn't give up, but we also never risked the life of the people. So I think that also distinguished Shackleton in some situations from other polar explorers, that in the end the life of the man on his expedition was more important than the goal. And there was also, of course, in the Endurance 22, so there was no risk of life in our expedition.
Yeah, exactly.
Less risk than in the Shackleton expedition.
Okay, we'll go for the final round of your final remarks, and I would like you to address similarly the final question. Where do you see the future trends in understanding sea ice as maritime operations are forecasted to increase in the Arctic? Start with you, Shay.
Oh, where do I see the trend? I mean, I have a background in geospatial machine learning. I like to think about things that can be automated. You know, I'd be very interested, you know, ICEYE has this potential of essentially creating video, high resolution. Right now we're at 0.5 meter per pixel-ish. You know, we can pull that down and then have SAR video as we traverse locations. And then thinking about, you know, of course, coupling expertise from deep subject matter experts, like here, but with additional software and tooling, just I think opens up a tremendous potential in just like rapid information, being able to explore new waters, and you know, maybe reducing some of the overhead or the risk associated with these types of missions.
Lasse.
Yeah, so we are on involved in research programs where these kind of images are automatically classified and interpreted, and even on supercomputers, all these data might be analyzed, and you can even in the future might do a Google Maps kind of route suggestion going from A to B. Whether this is a good suggestion then or not is of course with the ice navigator to decide. But I think this is also something which will come eventually over the next years, that all these data will be processed somewhere in the back end automatically.
Duke.
I think I've been saying the same thing in fora like this for decades, looking up, as you said, 40. Ice navigators need the highest resolution possible, all the time, and before we want it. And what we're now getting is a stage where we were almost there. We are getting down to less than a meter resolution. You can get that in an office computer when you're looking at a 500 megabyte image on your computer, but trying to get that 500 megabyte image to a ship is totally different. What we're now seeing on the bridge of a ship is that really good resolution. We're getting it very quickly, and we're getting it very, not just quickly, but timely where we want it. Not over there, but here. And that allows us to not only plan, but execute a voyage, not only safely, but in the best possible way as to leave the least footprint behind us, because we are now able to choose paths that will be the least deleterious in an ice regime, because they're the most easy for the ship. I see nothing but improvement in safety and environmental protection coming as our technology continues to increase to the point where we're looking at animated real-time imagery with our ship displayed on it, making it better for the environment for the future.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Duke. So thank you very much, dear audience, for your great questions. Thank you, dear fellow panelists, for your great remarks. There is one more interesting session to go before the drinks, all the time before we want them. Thank you.